You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Yes, it is time now for Truth, Justice, and the NBA. For this, the 28th day of April of 2015. We're going to be talking about the Western Conference now. We will talk about the East. We'll ping-pong back and forth as we'll talk about the East on the next show. Right now, the Western Conference, and you have a total of 4 series. We'll talk a little bit about the first team from the West to be eliminated from the playoffs. But for right now, let's talk about a series that's still a ways away from anybody getting knocked out. And that's the Clippers and the Spurs. And you know that Chris Paul was going to be in serious game mode. We knew this because about 4 hours before tip at the AT&T Center in San Antonio, Paul was already on the court warming up. 4 hours before the game started. And saw the Clippers before the game. No smiling, not much to say. Complete game face. It was business for the Clippers. They got off to a great start. And Chris Paul showing why he is one of the best point guards of our generation, and by the way, bounced back from that Game 3 disappointment and had 34 points in the game, including making 11 field goals and not missing any free throws at all. The Clippers steal the home court back. They win the game 114-105. So Chris Paul, being a great player in the NBA, being a future Hall of Famer, which he is, by the way, it doesn't mean that you're going to be great all the time. As a matter of fact, you're going to have bad games, even in the playoffs. What makes you an iconic player is bouncing back, okay? And we know that Chris Paul's never played in the conference finals before. And who knows if it's going to happen this year, but you got to commend Paul from the beginning of the day all the way to game time. And at the end, he showed that he could bounce back from, disappointment in Game 3, Friday and on Sunday, delivering with a 34-point performance. Blake Griffin, remember the game 2 games ago at the end? That costly turnover, and then overtime just basically disappearing. How about his Game 4 performance? Had nearly a 20-20. He didn't have 20 points, almost had 20 rebounds, 19 boards for the All-Star from Oklahoma. For Blake Griffin, big-time performance for him. Also, too, J.J. Redick was solid outside 17 points. And off the bench, the coach's son, Austin Rivers, his first ever postseason series, 7 of 8 shooting for 16 points. Speaking of the bench in this game, I think one of the key stats in this game was the bench, because San Antonio typically is going to outscore the opposition's bench nearly every time, okay, because they go that deep. The bench total was 39-33 in favor of San Antonio, okay, but that's not the significant point. You really have to look at this number more closely. The Clippers only played 4 players off their bench. Of course, Rivers had the 16 points. Also, look at this other stat, of course, and Crawford, by the way, chipped in too. The Spurs played everybody in this game, okay? They went 13 deep. That's 8 bench players, 5 starters, and they only got a combined 39 points from their 8 players off the bench, okay? So for the Clippers to really hold their own against San Antonio's bench, I thought was a big factor in this game and negated a lot of that bench advantage that San Antonio typically possesses. There was no advantage at all, though, for San Antonio's offense in terms of 2 of its starters, Danny Green and Thiago Splitter, usually reliable. Well, they were anything but on Sunday. Neither of them scored a point in the game. Tim Duncan had 22 points on 8 of 13 shooting, so from the post position did his part. And Tony Parker, 7 of 15, 18 points. But again, 2 of the starters not scoring. And by the way, Popovich, after the game, the San Antonio coach said that it was an undisciplined performance by his team, and normally you don't get that from San Antonio. So, do the Clippers have concerns entering Game 5? I would say yes from this standpoint. Matt Barnes, where are you? Okay, Barnes, he's a veteran. He's played for several teams, so it's not like he doesn't know how to play ball, okay? Barnes, a combined 13 points in his last 3 games, including just 4, despite the win on Sunday, 2 of 8 shooting. So, Matt Barnes, the Clippers need you because other than him, they don't really have any other true small forwards except for a guy that's been around, longer than molasses, and that's Hedo Turkoglu. And I don't know how many minutes you want to use that guy. I mean, they hardly played him at all on Sunday. So we'll see if Rivers sticks with the plan of Barnes or if he maybe goes to a 3-guard lineup. We'll have to see how all that develops. But Game 5 from Staples on Friday in L.A., how significant is this game? Fact, in the NBA playoffs, ever since we've had 4 out of 7 series, anytime a series is tied at 2, the winner of Game 5 goes on to win that series 82% of the time. Yeah, I would say it's pretty important, okay? I'd say Game 5 is important. Now let's move along to Dallas and Houston. The Rockets trying to sweep their North Texas rivals and get into the second round of the playoffs. And early on, everything looked good. Not only did Houston at the end of the first quarter have a 9-point lead, but they were scoring machines as well. And Dwight Howard seems like he was going to pick up from where he left off in game number 3. He had 10 points. But who knew that Superman, quote, end of quote, was going to have just a 13-point total game? That's right. He only had 3 after the great 10-point first quarter start. Matter of fact, the Rockets in the second quarter, well, they look like duds, if you will. Pun intended, by the way, on that. Fizzled and only had a total of 18 points in the second quarter, while the Mavericks finally got it going with 36 points in the second and had a good-sized lead. And then that lead just absolutely ballooned in the third quarter, and they were well on their way to avoiding a sweep and staying alive and winning game number 4. So Monta Ellis, boy, he looked at the big Monta, you know. Another fantastic game for Monta Ellis for Dallas in the winning effort this time. 31 points, 13 of 21 shooting. You'll take that any day of the week. Tyson Chandler, one of the biggest reasons why Dallas had a good rebounding game. He had 14 boards, only 10 points. But again, his impact, the veteran, was made on the glass. As a matter of fact, for the game, here's a quick fact for you. Dallas out-rebounded Houston. Wouldn't expect that, you know, with the guys that that the Rockets had with Howard and Smith, just to mention two. 52-38, plus 14 advantage for Dallas earlier in the week. And then offensive rebounding was in the favor of Dallas as well. 16-7. That's multiple chances, multiple points you can get. And that's why this game kind of got away from Houston in the second quarter. And by the time they got to the fourth quarter and Houston did make a little bit of a charge, Dirk Nowitzki was solid. He had 16 for the game, but 10 of those points came in the fourth quarter for the veteran. So unlike game 2, where Nowitzki disappeared, in game number 4, just when Houston might be showing some signs of life, Nowitzki says, we got a big lead. We're not going to lose it. Other things about game number 4 that might pop out just a little bit for you right there. Jason Terry. A rare game for the former Maverick, now Houston Rocket, where he was not clutch at all. In fact, him and Ariza were just flat out bad in the game. I mean, Ariza only had 7 points, and by the way, too, Terry with just 3. You wouldn't expect that, especially because these two teams, you know, not to say that they're horrible defensively, but defense is not either team's forte. So, for Houston, after that first quarter, opportunity lost. We'll see in game number 5 back at Houston on Tuesday if they can seal the deal. Dallas has a little confidence now, but the one thing you really got to look at if you're Houston is getting back to crashing the boards. Dwight Howard has to be a factor like he was in games 2 and 3, and if so, and if the Beard James Harden can get a little more point production. By the way, he did have a 24-point game, so it wasn't like he was awful. You get the feeling, though, that he's going to have even more than that for Houston to get past Dallas and move on to face either the Spurs or the Clippers in round number 2. So game 5, we'll see if Houston, as the Bee Gees would say, can stay alive, or we'll see if Houston can tell us that game 4 was just a speed bump and not a trap. Now, let's move on to a couple of games we haven't had a chance to talk about yet. That's the 4 versus 5. That's Memphis versus Portland. Of course, Portland being the 4. But so far, you know, they've been the 0. Up to a few days ago because of the fact that they were down 2-0, but they got to go back home. They got to play at the Monta Center. Well, of course, that's one of the toughest places for any opposition to win. But in game number 3, again, they found themselves behind. And they found themselves behind by a lot. And that's because Memphis broke a playoff franchise record for most points in a half with 62. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me because of the fact that when you think of Memphis, you think of defense and you think of mid to high 90s, maybe a 100-plus score occasionally, but not 62 points after 24 minutes. And by the way, you know, Portland would make a run. Damian Lillard finally found his shot, and who knows if it was just the home comfort or the fact that Mike Conley only played one half because of a facial injury, which Conley didn't play in game number 4 at all because of that. Lillard finally. Better shooting, 9 of 17, 22 points after just being flat out miserable in games number 1 and 2. But you could tell in game number 3, maybe a little bit of life for Portland. It's just that Memphis was able to make the plays down the stretch, and I thought Gasol was clutch in the second half with his shooting, but also, too, I thought, too, his rebounding, his presence inside made all the difference in the world. Another thing that really made a difference in game number 3 for Memphis, Nick Chrfis. Remember, Udro did not play in game 3 because of the ankle injury in game 2, but Chrfis delivered with 13 points and did not have any turnovers. So Memphis did something in this game that they've never done before. That is go up 3-0. They've never been up 3-0 in the franchise's history of any 4 out of 7 series. And one other stat, too, and this is pretty much a wash. And by the way, in a losing effort, C.J. McCollum had 26 points. We'll mention McCollum's name, by the way, in a little bit for game number 4. Here's a stat that will blow your mind away. Both teams in this game, 47% shooting. That's right, 47%, 36 of 77 exactly for both teams. Yeah, that's one of those stats you may never see again. Game number 4, though, Portland, just like Dallas, stays alive. Thanks to Damian Lillard. And Lillard, as good as he was in game 3 and a loss, game 4, he was even better. And Portland erases a double-digit deficit and goes on to win the game 99-92, staying alive for at least one more day. Again, Conley did not play in this game, and maybe that was part of it. Maybe Lillard found a little more comfort in going against Udro, who was not 100%, and against Chrfis, who doesn't have that much experience in the playoffs. So when you look at this particular game, the rebounding edge belonged to Portland. Yeah, that might be a big reason why the Blazers were able to win game 4. 50-40, the advantage, plus 10 in favor of the guys from Oregon. Looking at this game as well, Batum. We look at Nick Batum and Lemarcus Aldridge, despite the win, didn't do very well from the field. 9 of a combined 35 points. We wonder, too, if this might be the last home game that Aldridge will ever play because he's a free agent and reports are he's not happy there in the Northwest. And when you got a couple guys that are struggling, somebody else has got to pick up the slack. How about Myers Leonard? Didn't play very much in this game at all, but Leonard, 13 points, 13 boards, no turnovers. Big performance for Myers Leonard. And you're looking at C.J. McCollum. We're talking about a guy that his minutes were limited. In fact, during the final 5 minutes, one of the few times we saw him play, took 3 shots, made all 3. And this is when things got really, really tight. And it was McCollum who came through. And then also Damian Lillard, 32 points in the game. And he had a big 4-point play with just under 2 minutes to go. So the Blazers showed a lot of heart, okay? Both these teams are banged up. That's why I call it the MASH series. And Portland showed that they still have a lot of pride. They still do not want the season to come to an end. And you got to give them credit for hanging tough, hanging in there. They only scored 13 in the third, but 31 in the fourth quarter. And they proved also they could win a low-paced game, too, because the Blazers did not break the 100-point plateau. So that gives them a little bit of confidence, but still, Aldridge has to play a little bit better. He did find things in games 1 and 2 despite those losses, but games 3 and 4, his game has digressed, and who knows if he's tired or if he just doesn't feel it. We'll find out in game number 4 during the middle part of the week, game 5. And then, going to talk about game 4. We have not had a chance to talk about Golden State and New Orleans as we wrap up our Western Conference Truth, Justice in the NBA. The Warriors, opposite game of game 3, where they had to battle back from 20 behind. In this one, it was the shooting of Steph Curry, and believe me, he was busy shooting all right. 39 points. Klay Thompson had 25. Green, 22. The big 3 for Golden State, a combined 86 points. They accounted for 86 of the 109 points for Golden State. Just a mind-boggling stat in that one. And what was the big difference in this game, despite New Orleans, coming back and making it interesting? 3-point shooting. Warriors over 50% in the game, 13 of 24. Meantime, the Pelicans, well, their chances flew away with 5 of 22. They were just too in love with the 3-point shot, and you can only hit 5 of 22. It doesn't matter how great Anthony Davis is playing. Davis, by the way, had a double-double, 36 points and 11 rebounds. This is a star of the future if he's not already, and Eric Gordon did all he could with 29 points for the Pelicans on 12 of 21 shooting. But when we look at this game, we will look at the players who didn't come through for the Pelicans. Tyreke Evans, Quincy Pondexter, 2 of 12 combined field goal shooting. So it wasn't a overall great game for the Pelicans. Good by a few players, but not enough of them. And the big three, when they get over 80 combined points, this gets over 85, you might as well turn out the lights because the party at that point is over. Curry proved in this game, if he hadn't proved it already, I think he did, why he is the MVP. He can help a team get to a big lead, and then when the New Orleans got that lead from 20, I think down to 6, it was Curry and company that was able to seal the deal in the final 3 minutes. So Golden State, they're going to be anxiously awaiting either Portland or Memphis in round number 2. And it is time for us to say goodbye to the New Orleans Pelicans. They are an up-and-coming team, but not a present team. So here they are. Let's scratch those babies out. Pelicans are history. But some young talent on that team. Monty Williams, nice coach. And I see the Pelicans, if they can find another key contributor to go with Anthony Davis, watch out. They won't be 8 seeds anymore. They'll be much higher. So that will do it, ladies and gentlemen, for my look at truth, justice, and the NBA as we try to find a pen or a marker that actually isn't dried out. That would probably help. And here we go. So the West now down to 7. Portland and Dallas. Yep, Portland, Dallas, still on there. We'll talk about the East on the next show, and we'll talk about Milwaukee and Brooklyn not wanting to end their seasons just yet. Take care.